just before we kick off though, just to say we are recording tonight, so the recording will be made available to everyone that's registered and to all of you that are listening tonight. There is a conversations function, so hopefully if you click on the three dots over on the left, that will allow you to use that conversation function and type in any of your questions. So I'm going to moderate those questions at the end, and Andy may even ask you some questions as we go, and he'd be pleased to hear your feedback as we go along. So just to introduce Andy, he is a founder and director of Rockstar Tutors. It's a boutique-based tutoring company out of New York City. Andy manages over 20 tutors, offering personalised SAT and ACT tutoring. Andy himself has been tutoring for over 15 years and I believe has tutored across all sides of the globe. So really looking forward to hearing from tonight, a true expert in all things SAT. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Andy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone for being here. So exciting. First, the goal for today is to learn about the SAT, what role it plays, maybe what role it doesn't play, and kind of what the process and timeline might look like. So let's start first off with what is the SAT. The SAT, if you're interested in SAT history, which you shouldn't be, it was found, the first SAT was given in 1926 when it was called the Scholastic Aptitude Test. They changed the name to the Scholastic Assessment Test in 1993, and now it actually stands for nothing. So the SAT actually does not stand for anything. What is its goal? It is to help colleges standardize their admissions procedures, right? As you can imagine, there are people applying to schools from all over the world. So they need to somehow know what a B is from a school in the UK somewhere compared to a B to a school from a school in Texas. The SAT is one way they have to say, okay, here's how I can see what this student can actually achieve. One thing that's really important is the SAT now is all digital. So you will take it on the exact device you are likely on right now, unless you're on a phone, I just realized. So you can't take it on a phone, but your laptop, your iPad, etc. It's also adaptive, which means based on your performance in the first module, you will either unlock a hard or an easy second module. It's not adaptive question by question. It's adaptive by kind of more on the macro level. So basically, the first, it's separated into two halves, the reading and writing half and the math half. You take the first reading module, that's 32 minutes, which is 27 questions. And based on how you do on this one, you're either going to unlock one of two options for the second module. And then you get a 10-minute break, yay, followed by the math half of the test, which is 35 minutes in one module, 22 questions. And similarly, based on your performance in module 1, you'll either get a hard module 2 or an easy module 2. So that's a brief overview of the structure and some SAT history. It's also important to note if you have learning differences or get accommodations in your school, meaning if you get like time and a half for tests maybe, or double time for tests. Again, this is not for everyone, but of course the SAT also gives accommodations for those who qualify. So I would definitely apply at least 2 months before your first date through your school. So talk to your school's learning specialist or counselor, and they can kind of help guide you on the process to getting accommodations through College Board. And again, this is for people who have learning differences or get accommodations through their school. Then with time and a half accommodations, for example, you get 48 minutes and 53 minutes. So basically multiply the initial time by time and a half. So how is this thing scored? The SAT is out of 1,600 total points. That's 800 from reading and writing and 800 from math. What that means, if you're unfamiliar with the scoring, is basically the percentiles are the easiest way to think how you're doing compared to other people. So for example, let's say you take an SAT and you end up with a, let's say an 1150. Right? So that kind of puts you in this range right here. That means percentile-wise, you are in the 67th through 74th percentile. So that means, let's say 100 people take the test, you're going to do better than about 67 of them, which is pretty good. So when you look at this SAT score, you know, especially if you're not from the US, I know a decent number of you guys are not from the US. I think mostly from the UK, maybe. Actually, this is a fun moment. Can you say in the conversations in the chat, where are you from? Like, what country are you from? Just curious where people are from. I'm based in New York City, in Brooklyn, New York. Yes. Oh, UK, India, England, UK, England. Cool. Oh, a lot of England, a lot of UK, Bristol, UK. Awesome. Ireland, very cool. Love it. What's up, chat? How are you guys? This is so good. South Africa. Oh, nice. Tanzania. Very cool. Awesome. So you may not be as familiar with this test as students from the US are. You know, that's okay. That's so great that you're on this webinar now to learn more about the test. So when you get to those really high scores, you know, which maybe that's one of your goals, maybe not. You know, if you get, for example, a 1430, right, you are already in the 97th to 99th percentile, meaning if 100 people take the test, you are going to score better than 97 of them. That's amazing. Then, of course, at the very top is you know, you're the best in the world. So yes, that is the gist of how the scoring works. And I believe, by the way, if you have questions partway through, you can just throw them into the chat. And I think, I'll get to them at the end, I think. So if you have questions, just throw them in there, and then we'll do questions at the end. So as you think of them, feel free to throw them in. Now, there are generally two buckets of people applying to schools. I understand many of us here are athletes. Right. So what scores do schools want for non-recruited athletes? So for non-recruited athletes, you know, they're very strict score requirements, I guess, for people. If you're looking at what I'm going to call in this webinar, the Ivy League Plus schools, these are the top schools, the Ivy League Plus, you know, University of Chicago, Stanford, MIT, all of these Duke, all of these top schools, you know, you have to get a 98th, 97th, 99th percentile score. This is a top score. For example, the median score at Yale is about a 15, I think it's like a 1520 or so. That's the median score. By the way, the SAT tests on the concept of median. So if you know what I'm talking about, you're ahead of the game. Then we have, I would say, the selective schools. These are still, you know, competitive academically, but not the top tier. These schools, you need a 1350 to 1450 approximately. That would be a school like University of Miami, which I think the median score is about a 1400. So if you apply with a 1450, for example, to University of Miami as a non-recruited athlete, you're doing pretty great because your median student has a 1400. So you're showing them through your SAT score that you more than belong. And then I would say the mid-tier schools, a school like Auburn, for example, I think it was a 1320. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, it just disappeared. Oh, I think I know why. Sorry about that. 1320 or so is the Auburn median. You can still see my slide, right? I just want to make sure I had some weird glitch. I just want to make sure, give me some affirmations in the chat that you're still seeing my slide about non-recruited athletes. Yes.
All good, Andy. Yep.
Great. Thank you. I had something weird go down. Great. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Teamwork. Okay, great. So that's what schools are looking for from non-recruited athletes. It's also important to note that you don't have to submit SAT scores, which brings us to my next thing of, you know, there are different SAT policies. There are many different SAT policies. So while the top schools require, let me change my color. I like that blue a little bit more. Made me feel, oh yeah, that one, that's the one. While the top schools, most of them require the SAT, during COVID and even before that, fewer and fewer schools were requiring the SAT. They are test optional schools, but more and more schools are reinstating test requirements, as recent studies show that SAT scores truly do mean something. So this is an article from the New York Times from 2024, The Misguided War on the SAT. I will read this for us right now. Colleges have fled standardized tests on the theory that they hurt diversity. That's not what the research shows. Research has increasingly shown that standardized test scores contain real information, helping to predict college grades, chances of graduation, and post-college success. test scores are more reliable than high school grades, partly because of grade inflation in recent years. So now more and more schools are reinstating their test required admissions policy. This is not all schools at all. Most schools are test optional. I want to repeat that. Most schools are still test optional. That's great news. The best thing to do is simply go to the school's admissions website, like this one here, University of Michigan, and just check if they require the SAT or ACT or not. They will tell you very plainly in the undergraduate admissions section of their website. So, for example, for University of Michigan, SAT or ACT score, if available, and you wish them to be considered. So you may just not wish them to be considered. So in which case, you do not have to send scores to University of Michigan if you want to apply there. University of Texas, however, is now requiring standardized testing again. So again, this is part of the trend. More and more schools are requiring them. I'll also add that test optional means that only people who get really good scores submit their scores. So once the majority of schools became test optional, it all of a sudden median SAT scores shot up, because, you know, if you only got a 1200 and you wanted to apply to, you know, Duke, you would simply not send your 1200. You'd only send it if you had a 1490, right? So that's a kind of a side effect that I don't know if the colleges anticipated, but now scores are all their reported scores are incredibly high because people are only sending high scores. If you're not getting a high score, you just apply without a score. Okay, so next. Super scoring is an important policy to keep in mind. What is super scoring? Let's find out. Super scoring is when a college takes your highest section scores across multiple SAT test dates and combines them into one new super composite score. Again, I would just check the website from colleges. You know, you can just type into Google, does Dartmouth super score the SAT? You know, does University of California, Los Angeles super score the SAT, etc. And you can go to their site and they will tell you. These are actually pulled from different sites that I found. Stanford, for example. Does Stanford super score the SAT? We will super score. That's fantastic news. So does University of Maryland, where I'm from. Important to note, I just want to show you how that works in practice. Let's say you take, let's say you take the SAT 3 times. 1, 2, 3. By the way, I've found that it does take 3 times to maximize scores. Let's say, you know, the SAT is going to be a large part, an important part of your application. Most students will take the test 3 times plus or minus 1 time. So between 2 and 4 times. For a lot of reasons. It's a hard test. Anything can happen on test day. You learn a lot from your first test that you can apply to your second test, etc. But let's say on your first test, you get a 550 in reading and writing and a 600 in math. For a total score, you know, they just add these two, for a total score of 1150. Then on your second test, you get a 680 in reading and writing and a 430 in math for a total score of 1110. And then on your third test, you get a 570 and a 700 for a total of 1270. Well, actually, for all schools that super score, like Stanford, like University of Maryland, they are really going to look at your best reading and writing and your best math score. So this is the score that they will be looking at, 680 plus 700. And if I did my math right, that's going to be a 1380. So whether a school super scores or not is really important strategically, you know, in terms of how you lay out your prep plan, I would say. Most schools super score. These days, most schools super score. Next. Nice. Why do recruited student athletes need to take the SAT if most schools are test optional? Fantastic question, right? You may be thinking, I'm not trying to go to one of these Ivy League plus institutions. Do I need to take this thing? Why do I even need to take this? Why am I here right now, right? But there are a few good reasons. One I know is if you are interested in those Ivy League plus schools, potentially, those require scores, and more schools are joining this score required group, including schools you may not expect, like University of Texas, for example. So you just, it's better to keep your options open. That brings me actually to here. Specifically, you don't know what schools and what coaches will be interested in you, right? You just don't know that yet. Keep your options open by taking the SAT. What if one of the Ivy League plus schools that requires SAT is just really interested in you, and what if they're the only school that's interested in you? It's good to just keep your options open. That's the goal of all of this, right? Keep your doors open. Also, even if you're not interested in those most competitive schools, which is okay, by the way, I don't mean to sit here saying you must be interested in going to Princeton. In fact, you do not need to be interested in going to Princeton. Great school, though, of course. Athletic scholarships are often stacked along with academic scholarships. So when a student is getting a full ride to a school, it is actually rarely a full 100% athletic scholarship. So it's stacked with an academic scholarship, which can be contingent on SAT scores, meaning can depend on SAT scores. So that would be one reason that you need to take the SAT as a recruited athlete, even if you're applying to non-Ivy League plus schools. Also, let's talk about the pre-read. The pre-read from the admissions department, which is basically when a coach goes to the admissions department with your background. The coach is interested in you. They bring not your application, but you as what your general transcript is, and just what your athletic background and academic background and any standardized testing scores you do have. They'll bring that to the admissions department, and the admissions department may say, great, this student, we'll take him. You're good to go, coach. You can count him as an admit, basically. Or they may say, hey, this student is great, but actually, in order for us to really bring them onto campus, they need to meet a certain SAT score threshold. Do you think they can get their SAT score up to 100 points, maybe? And then the coach will come back to you and tell you that. So in the pre-read process, you may find out that you need to work on your SAT score. You may, not definitely, right? But you may. Also, the less of a star recruit you are, the more your SAT score and your grades, by the way, keep studying hard, may come into play and make you more appealing to the coach in the school. Some schools have, an average SAT score that the team as a whole needs to hit. This is not all schools. Schools have different policies, but hey, if you are not the best soccer player on the team, but you have amazing grades and an amazing SAT score, the coach might look at you and say, okay, great, you're a big asset to the team in another way, and you are great at soccer. Yes, this is next slide. What SAT scores must recruited student athletes get? So on the, I would say, let's say we're talking about the lower end of the threshold, right? Actually, let me back up a little bit. Let's talk about mainstream students for a second. Non-recruited athletes, they have to get in these kind of windows we talked about a second ago, right? These windows here. Non-recruited athletes, if they're applying to these schools, need to get these scores, right? But luckily, you have spent if you are a recruited athlete, which I believe many of you in this room, Zoom room, or not Zoom, sorry, Digital Samba room, may be. Let me find, where was I actually? Did I just, here? Not that one. Yes, here we are. You can get a lower score, and the better you are at your sport, the lower the score can be, basically. So it's like a sliding scale in that sense. But on the low end of it, the NAIA is, let me not botch this, the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. If you do not have a 2.3 GPA, 2.3 plus GPA at your school, grade point average, you need to take the SAT, and you must get a 970 total on that SAT. Granted, a 970 for many students is not that difficult to achieve, but maybe it could be, right? Depending, maybe you're just not a standardized test kind of guy or kind of girl, right? So if you do not have a certain GPA, in order to be eligible to play sports in college, you need to either get a 970 on your SAT or demonstrate that you graduated in the top half of your high school class, which is done through a letter via your school. So this could be a reason that you may need to take the SAT. If your grades are not on the high end, you may need to take it to actually have eligibility, athletic eligibility. And then, as I said before, a recruited athlete, let's say, for example, there is someone who is a Harvard student, might need to get a 1550 SAT score for a mainstream Harvard student to get into Harvard, right? That is a very, very great, amazing score. But in order to get into a school like Harvard, you may be expected to just get a 1550 or something close to it, maybe. Harvard is also not test optional. So, but if you're a recruited athlete and a highly recruited athlete, that 1550, that could be a 1450, that could be a 1400, depending on, your other parts of your application and how highly recruited you are. You could get potentially into Harvard with a 1350. Your coach could say this. It just is going to depend on the details of the scenario. So if you are a recruited athlete, you do not need to hit those mainstream numbers, because frankly, you've spent your time becoming amazing at something else that is a big asset to the school, right? Congratulations on that. Next, you may have heard of the ACT. So first and foremost, the ACT is just another test, standardized test option. So students either prepare for the SAT or the ACT. Both are equally accepted by US universities. The few differences: the ACT can be taken as a paper and pencil test in the US, not internationally. So I've seen it's an international crowd. Basically, you don't need to worry about this. You should take the SAT if you are not in the US, because the digital ACT is the only one offered internationally outside the US. And the digital ACT, structurally, just the logistics of the test taking experience, they haven't worked out those kinks yet for a variety of reasons I don't have time to get into, and a variety of reasons you don't care about. So the ACT, if you're international, don't worry about that, I would say. If you are in the US, though, you should take a diagnostic in both and determine which is a better fit. So what does this test actually look like, right? Let's get into some questions. And actually, we can get, the chat has been active, just in terms of when I ask it questions. Chat, are you still with us? Are we here still? I think so. I'm going to ask a question here. So you can actually take a look at this. This question is going to appear, this is like the grammar portion of the SAT. Which choice completes the text so that it conforms to the conventions of standard English? That basically means grammar. When they see this, we are in the grammar section of the SAT. Sorry, I might have misspoke. The SAT. The key to the SAT is learning a bunch of strategies, right? So I'm going to take you through one right now. When you get to the conventions of standard English section, and don't be shy, feel free to say what answer you think it is in the comments. I would not read this first. I would not read the passage first. This is just one of, I would say, my strategies here. When you see verbs of different forms, are we on the same page that these are verbs of different forms in the answer choices? When you see that, the first thing you should do is check plurality. You should check singular versus plural. So what I would do here on this kind of question is I would just write down next to each one, have specialized is a plural verb, because you can say like, they have specialized sounds better than she have specialized. Specialize is also a plural verb, because they specialize sounds better than she specialized. And has specialized is, she has specialized. That sounds better than they has specialized. And they are specializing sounds better. And actually, one home run tip, tell all your friends, on a question that has verbs of different forms in the answer choices, just pick the one that sticks out. If one answer choice sticks out numbers wise, just pick that one. So SAT prep is about a bunch, and that's the correct answer. SAT prep is about a bunch of like little strategies like that. Cool. Oh, no one said their answer in the chat. Try for this next one. Here's a sample SAT math question. What value of X satisfies the given equation? So of course we could, look into our fractions and do this, pencil and paper and do this out, right? But the key to SAT prep is looking at, I would say, what is the most efficient, most foolproof way to tackle the question, the way that taxes our brain the least. So of course we could do this out by pencil and paper. What is this? This will simplify to something like, is that 3/15, x? And we could do that and then combine these fractions and common denominator, etc. But there is a tool on the SAT called Desmos. Maybe you use it in your school, where there will be certain SAT math questions that are no-brainer. Just click the Desmos button in the SAT app. Just click the Desmos button and it opens up this calculator. And I would just, for this kind of question, throw the equation directly into Desmos. And what Desmos will do is solve it for you. It presents its answer as a vertical line, and you can just kind of look at the x-intercept. So the answer to this question, Desmos does all the algebra moves and it just simplifies it to x equals 1.25. So it's about finding these workarounds for all kinds of questions, so you don't have to tax your brain even on the easy questions. Yes. Reading, and this is the last SAT question. I don't know if this is exciting for people or not exciting for people to see actual SAT questions, but just so you get a sense of what it's doing. This is a reading question. Yeah, this is a reading question. Oh, that's why I understand what happened. Okay. And it asks, which choice best states the main purpose of the text? So on this, of course, we need to read the passage itself, but there are some specific strategies on main purpose questions. On main purpose questions, we don't like bold answer choices, and we don't like zoomed in specific answer choices. So the answer choices, looking at these, I'm already not gonna like which answer. Do any of them have words that are bold or too zoomed in, too specific? Let's see. Is anyone going to say anything in the chat? It's okay if you don't. I know it's like, is anyone going to put themselves out there? Give it a shot. Stakes are low. Oh, yes, D. So Sam, you said D. You're saying D is not right, or you're saying D is right? Yeah, Magnus, we're saying D. Are we liking D or not liking D? Just to clarify. I think the question I asked was, which ones are too bold? And you're right. This is too bold. D is too bold. Disappointing travels. This word is too bold. So we should be really leery of picking it. Same thing. There's another really bold portion of an answer choice. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to jump to it. That is the highly overrated part. So it's like, we can be pretty sure on a main purpose questions, it's not going to be this one. It's not going to be this one. So the key to SAT prep is getting these kind of strategies, in place. You are right. You guys are right. D is not right. Neither is C. Cool. Let's keep going just in the interest of time, but thanks for playing. See, this is fun, right? I guess. Next. And I'll hurry right along. The general SAT prep timeline. So for non-athletes, it's a later timeline. For athletes, it's an earlier timeline. I know that mostly athletes in here, so we'll talk about this. D1 coaches can contact students on June 15th at the end of year 11 in the British system, and that's the end of sophomore year in the US system. So that's right after your GCSE exams. And coaches from academically competitive schools often ask very early, what SAT scores do you have, or what are your practice scores looking like? Not all do that, but from competitive schools, they will ask. By competitive, I mean academically competitive, highly selective. So they might ask early. Given that, you should take your first official SAT maybe at the end of year 11, right, in June or August. If you're interested in those most selective schools, you might want to start prep before that, depending on how interested you are in those top schools. And again, I want to emphasize, you do not have to be interested in those most selective schools for many reasons. Then if we said the MATIC number is 3, your second test might be in September at the end of year 12, and your third test will be in October or November of year 12. For non-athletes, that whole timeline is just pushed back a little bit. The test is offered very frequently, right? It's like once every couple of months, and there are some breaks. There's a long break between December and March, but in general, the test is offered frequently. what I would do is sign up for test dates well before the registration deadline, just to make sure you get a good location and no late fee. This is like there's a late fee date, and it costs more if you are international. Not sure why, but that's, I guess, what they're doing. And it takes about 2.5 hours, and you get the results in 2 weeks. And you should send your scores to select colleges via collegeboard.org. College Board is the company that runs the SAT, after you consult coaches. I'll go for a couple more, and then we'll call it a day, and we'll open it up to questions. How do you prep for the SAT? Well, there are 3 ways. One is the most expensive. That is one-on-one tutoring, in which chemistry between the tutor and the student is crucial. For example, if you're watching this webinar, and you're like, oh, I like the way Andy is running things on Zoom. I would like a tutor like Andy. Or you might, that's important. Or you might be seeing this and saying, oh, I can't stand this guy. I want a tutor who is very different, right? A one-on-one tutor, the chemistry relationship is really important. There are also group class options, both online and in person, which are less expensive. And then lastly, the least expensive way is to just self-study. There are a lot of good resources out there. You need to be very self-motivated to do this, of course, but that's always a great option for the highly motivated. Last couple of things. My company is called Rockstar Tutors. I just want to talk about a few things that make us unique. One is a white glove onboarding process. I'll do 2 initial calls, basically, which is more than most companies do. First, I'll do a Zoom meeting with your mom or dad or guardian, just to get their perspective on you and what they think your goals are and what's realistic, and so I can hear about you through their eyes. And then also I do a separate phone call with you, so we can chat tutor preference. Who are your least favorite teachers? Who are your favorite teachers, etc. That way I can match you with someone who's actually a good fit. We do one-on-one tutoring and small group classes online. Also, there's a systematized hardware that we all agree is really important for tutoring. We all have 2 monitors, which maximizes lesson efficiency. We have a set of calculator programs that can be very helpful. And you've seen this. We all have something like this to write fluently on the screen for Zoom, but also maybe as importantly, we make sure that you guys have a similar thing, so you can also write fluently on the Zoom, right? We don't want you to be writing on your paper so we can't see it. We want to see what you're writing on the Zoom screen. Also, some systematized methods. We send lesson recap emails out. We'll use Quizlet or physical flashcards, because really it's a retention-based test. And we'll make a Google spreadsheet for you, and we'll probably use a third-party platform called Test Innovators. I'm rushing through this because this is the part you care about least, and because I'm supposed to only go to 2:30. This is my last slide. The next step is take a free practice SAT to see where you stand. You basically need to make a College Board account. Then after that, you download the Blue Book app, which is the actual app that you will take the real test in on your actual laptop or iPad. And then you can log into Blue Book and take a practice test right from the Blue Book app at home for free. There are several practice tests. After you take the test, which is again about 2.5 hours with standard time, they give you your scores immediately. And then you'll just know, oh, this is where I stand with 0 prep. Interesting. It's good to note that, so you know how to plan accordingly, and maybe what your trajectory might look like. Guys, that is it. Thank you so much. Opening the floor for any questions you have. My email is here, and my website's here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much.
Really useful. So I'm just going to remind people that the conversations function is where they can type in their questions. I'm going to start us off with one. Someone has actually just used WhatsApp to ask me this, but did you say that calculators were allowed in the test or not allowed?
Yes, so great question. Calculators are allowed on the test, both where's my calculator? Both, there's a list of approved calculators. So if you go to College Board's website and you type in what is the list of approved calculators, you'll see it. But also the built-in Desmos calculator, which is built into the Blue Book app, is incredibly powerful. And many students don't even touch their physical calculator. But calculators are allowed for the test, and there are some that are not allowed though. So you should definitely check that website to make sure your calculator is allowed.
Perfect. Someone just asked us, were there more slides after 18? I think you didn't show 19 and 20, but you did talk
Oh
us
my
through them.
gosh.
So those will be on the recording as well for people.
Got it. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Maybe there was some glitch in the system. Here's 19, which is about my company being awesome, and here is 20, which is about, if you can see it now, maybe not. I'm not sure. Maybe
That's
there's
it
just,
now. Yeah.
yeah, got it. So yeah, that's
Perfect.
they're the least important slides. So that's good that that's where the glitch happened.
No worries. So still, we'll just look out. Lots of people saying thank you, which is great. Some people are asking us, and you may not know the answer, but where in the UK can you take the test? Do you know the answer to that one?
Yeah, so there should be there are tons of people in the UK take this test. I've worked with several of them. I believe I bet there's testing centers, in near every big city, certainly in every big city, certainly. So I can't speak like with specifics, but it's yeah, definitely. I've never had any of my UK students say, "Oh, I can't find a testing center." The
Yeah.
key would be to sign up early because testing centers book up, and then what does happen sometimes is people have to, the morning of the SAT, have to drive 3 hours somewhere before they take the test, which is obviously a killer,
Yeah.
for performance. So I would just, if once you start the process, just book test dates, official test dates if you can.
Yeah, and once they set up an account, they can put in their postcode, their postal code, and then all of their nearest test centres will appear. So I know we have people have taken SATs in London, in Manchester, here in Northern Ireland. There's a site in Lisburn. There's a site in Dublin, in the south of Ireland as well. So most major cities do have test centres. How much does it cost to take the SAT test, Andy?
Yes, perfect. And I want to make sure my slides. Are they changing now? Do you see my
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Great. For outside of the US, it is $103 to take a test. So not cheap, but there are fee waivers if there is a demonstrated need. In the US, it's $60. I don't know why it's cheaper in the US, but internationally, outside the US, it is $103 to take the test. Last time I checked.
Okay. And I don't know if you touched on this, but it mentions there are 2 weeks for results. Is that the typical timeline? Is it the exact timeline? How
Yeah.
long should people wait?
So I would say the overwhelming majority of scores come back exactly 2 weeks after the test is taken. You'll get an email that will say your SAT score is here, and then you just log on to your College Board account and you will see it. Sadly, you'll never see the actual test questions you missed, which is too bad. That would be an incredibly helpful, part of the process, right? So you can analyze your mistakes, but you will just get a score. It'll say you got this score in reading and writing section and this score in the math section when you log in.
Okay. Someone has asked, do you think it's important to take more than one test?
Yes. So definitely, I would say, and again, it's important to know that everyone's going to have different score goals, right? Because based on what school you're applying to, based on how highly recruited of an athlete you are, based on if you're an athlete at all, right? Everyone's going to have very different goals here, but the magic number is kind of 3 to maximize potential. 3 plus or minus 1 test. So meaning most people take the test somewhere between 2 and 4 times if they really want to maximize their potential. But for other students, the SAT is not a super important part of their application. They can't dedicate bandwidth to improving their SAT score, or they would rather dedicate time to other pursuits, right? For any number of reasons. So I'd want to emphasize, like, it's not a one size fits all. The SAT, you may not submit an SAT score to the college that you apply to, right? It's optional, but I also want to say everything is optional, right? Good grades are optional. Having some strong extracurriculars is optional. Being an amazing soccer player is optional, right? But you ideally have enough of these optional things in your pocket to make you a really compelling candidate to get into the school you want to get into.
Perfect. Thank you. A couple of people have asked, do you need your own device or will it be provided on the day?
Great question. You need your own device. I don't know what they do if there's a student, just as there are fee waivers, if there's a demonstrated need for the test fee. I don't know what the policy is if there is I don't have a laptop or an iPad or a Chromebook. I don't have that offhand, but ChatGPT could probably give you a pretty good answer. But you're supposed to bring your own device. You should bring your own charger. Some students, I'm sure there'll be a couple students who forget their chargers. Bring your charger just in case as well.
Okay. That kind of wraps up the majority of questions. Someone has asked just around grade equivalence to the UK, but it's likely important to explain that, GCSE and A-level grades, they're really not the same thing and not the same curriculum.
Yeah, so while I have worked with, and tutors from my company have worked with a bunch of students from the UK, I'm not familiar enough with, the I guess conversions there to give an answer that is meaningful. So sadly, I can't help on that one. But I would look at the percentiles, right? So for example, where's the percentiles? It's over here. So for example, percentiles wise, maybe does the GCSE also give percentiles along with a score? Maybe, and then you can compare that, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
I think GCSEs will typically just be alpha grades, so
Got it. Yeah.
it is kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
Someone asked a question about master demos, and I'm going to ask that maybe they want to retype that question. But what I think they mean is, how important is it to take practice tests to be ready? Should you just do kind of tutoring, or actually is taking the practice test really important?
For sure. So it's both. Taking practice tests, if most of us in this room are athletes and some former athletes who can no longer play sports, I would say, are too old. But yeah, practice like you play, right? You need to have some reps where you're actually practicing the way it's going to feel on game day, aka test day. So part of it is sitting for and taking at home fully timed practice tests, which you can do, by the way. There are a couple sources of fully timed practice tests. There is Test Innovators, which it isn't cheap. It is about $199 US for access to 12 tests. But that's I would say the best, in my opinion, the best third-party source of tests. There are also free tests on the Blue Book app, but I would ration those tests out. There are only 5 of them or so, and those are the actual tests that College Board made. So you don't want to kind of take them all super early in the process while you're still figuring out how the test works. Those are ones you should save for a little later on in the process. Maybe take one to start, then practice on some third-party material so you don't waste the official ones. Then you can use the other free College Board ones. There are also a couple other tests. rtest.ai is another site that has some tests. There are Princeton Review, Kaplan tests. There are a bunch of materials out there. But yes, taking tests, but it's not just taking tests, because you need to analyze your mistakes, which you can do yourself if you're very, very, driven, right? Or you can do in a group class, online or in person, or in one-on-one tutoring sessions where a tutor, my tutors, for example, or a tutor from another company could take you through the process, and you go through your mistakes and you analyze what went wrong and come up with strategies.
Perfect. Someone has asked here, is there any specific score that you need in order to get an academic scholarship if you want to stack it with your sports scholarship?
Yeah, great question. So let's go here. I think it's going to be so specific for the school, so specific for your athletic prowess and where you rank there, and so specific for the academic scholarship you're looking for. So, I wish I had a better answer for you, but basically, the goal is, if you're looking for some form of academic scholarship, check out their SAT requirements, or when you get in touch with coaches, hopefully you'll be recruited and speak to coaches. Then you can ask them those questions too. They might have more specifics based on the school, based on their experience.
Excellent. Okay. I'm just going to encourage people to ask any final questions at this point. I see we have a new one actually. This is more first point. I'll just take a second to read it. So someone has stated that the first point have a test tuition offering that includes practice test strategies and so on. Will there be more info to come around this offering? So anyone that's currently working with First Point, they'll have their personal talent manager who will identify the resources we have available, support with booking tests and all of that. If you're not yet working with First Point and you're interested in our services, you can respond whenever we send you out the thank you message and the email. You can respond to us, and we will be able to let you know more about what First Point offer as well as on our website that outlines all of our services. But yes, if you're currently working with us, we do have provision for your test prep. So we'll just wait. We'll give it maybe a couple of minutes for any further questions. Obviously, Andy's there as well to provide more on his own company and his range of tutors. And you can just pick up his email address either just by taking it tonight or in the follow-up that we're going to send afterwards as well. Just a couple more thanks coming in, Andy. It has been really popular and people have stayed engaged throughout, which is brilliant. So we really appreciate your time tonight.
Great. Awesome.
So someone has just clarified their questions. We'll make this, I think we will make these the last two questions. We do appreciate them. Continue to come in. How important is Desmos in the test? So I actually said demos. How important is Desmos? Maybe explain a little more on Desmos.
Desmos is so incredibly important on the SAT math section. It is not only sometimes the most efficient way to just do simple calculations, but there are so many Desmos hacks and tricks that like this one of just putting the question directly into Desmos and letting it do all the work for you to find the answer and do the algebra. But that is like truly the tip of the iceberg. In terms of resources, I'm sure you could go to YouTube and type in SAT Desmos strategies, SAT Desmos tricks, and you will be so shocked by what you find. Obviously, any tutor you work with, will be incredibly well versed in what Desmos strategies hopefully you should use specifically, because every student should rely on it a different amount, I would say, in different ways for different things. But when you get to learn how powerful Desmos is, you will be shocked that it is allowed on the test. Frankly, it's kind of, the SAT recently changed to be this format in 2 years ago or whatever. It's shocking how much you can do. Learn Desmos. You could, if you do a YouTube search, you'll find some amazing strategies.
Perfect. And the final one for tonight, it's an easy one. Do you use College Board to find your test location? I'll let you answer.
Yes. So once you make your account, you can click My SAT and register for a test. And, you will type in your postal code and enter, and it will show you all of the test locations near you. And the UK, I'm not speaking with anything besides anecdotal data, but in terms of the country outside the US with, that's going to have tons of test centers that administer real SATs, it's got to be the UK. I feel like I've had tons of UK students, and it makes sense that UK students, given language especially, might want to come to college in the US potentially. That you would do it all through there. And I don't think there will be a shortage. I would still sign up early because you just don't want to be locked out. And, the key is being proactive. The cool thing about test prep is it is kind of a bridge into adulthood. It's like you really have to start thinking about your time and like, okay, I can either study for the SAT right now, or I can do this fun activity that might not be as productive. Or, you really have to start making these judgment calls on things when it comes to the SAT. So in that sense, being on top of things, making sure you're signed up, that kind of stuff becomes so important. And in that way, it's a nice bridge into, hey, you're almost an adult, right? So it's time to start learning those skills.
Okay, lots of people have really thanked you for your detailed answers. So for the final time, Andy, thank you. We really appreciate it. We look forward to sharing all of your resources with everyone that's listened tonight. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.